Good morning, everyone. It's always good to be back here with you guys. We have had another amazing year of traveling the nations, of being able to partner with some really incredible people that are doing some really great stuff. And in the last couple of years especially, we've really been focused on countries that are largely unreached. So an incredibly small percentage of people are believers there. And I don't know if you guys know this, but like in the world of missions, unfortunately, the vast majority of missionaries end up in places where all the other missionaries already are. And then you have these unreached people groups, and a lot of them typically end up being either Muslim, Hindu, or Buddhist, and a very small percentage of missionaries end up there. And that's really where we've been focusing, and we've had this incredible opportunity to partner with a church that has a ministry training school. And so everybody who's been traveling with us for the last 2 years, they've gone through either 2 or 3 years of a ministry training school focused on missions to unreached people. And we get the opportunity of taking them out for 8 to 9 months and helping them partner and come alongside people who are already doing work in those spaces. And it's so encouraging to see some of the stuff that's happening. I want to share just a couple of stories with you about some of the people and some of the ministries that we've been able to work with. So, in Tajikistan, which is probably a place a lot of you have heard of before. Tajikistan, it's this small country in Central Asia, and Tajikistan is like, it's this really strategic point because it kind of touches like everything. And all of the places in Central Asia that are rough. So it's like it borders with Turkmenistan, it borders with Afghanistan, and people from Tajikistan actually have the freedom to travel to these countries very easily. And so there are workers there, and they're actually training locals who are going out and ministering to the countries surrounding them. And one of the ministries that we got to work with, they're ministering to Afghan refugees in Tajikistan. I don't know if you guys know this, but there are Afghan refugees that are scattered like all over the world. There are tons of them in the United States. One of my friends is actually like a missionary in the States to Afghan refugees living in Clarkston, Georgia, which is the highest concentration of Afghan refugees in the United States. And we actually got to sit with these 3 girls one night, and they were spending time talking with us. And one of the people on my team, they asked like a very sincere question. They said like, "Oh, like what are your dreams?" And these 3 girls, they said, "Our dream is to be able to live somewhere where people don't hate us just because of where we're from." And all of us just kind of sat there like, "Okay, we don't know that life," you know. And There's this interesting thing where, and this actually happens in a lot of places in the world, they will allow refugees to come and live in their country, but they won't allow them to do anything there. So, like, they will give them the right to live in their country, but not to work or make an income. So how do they survive? Right? And they're in this really vulnerable position. And so we got to work with people who actually are part of YWAM. If you guys have ever heard of YWAM, they're everywhere in the world doing lots of awesome stuff. And they are ministering to these people, to these refugees, trying to give them opportunities, trying to give them hope and education so that they can survive and thrive and hopefully get to know the Lord in this foreign country they're in. There's also kind of a growing thing happening, especially in some of these, they used to call them closed countries because these are countries that don't want missionaries there. And they decided on some different language, so a lot of times they call them creative access countries. Because you have to find a different way. You can't just go there and be a missionary. You can't just go there and like start a church and like set up a building and put a sign outside and invite people to your church. And so there are a lot of people doing something called BAM, or Business as Missions. So they're starting businesses in these places that are actually serving the community. They employ locals, and as they spend time with them in daily life and working together with them, they are discipling these people and bringing them into the kingdom. And it's really awesome. There's actually a huge movement of this. I was in Kazakhstan, which is a little further north than Tajikistan. It has a massive border with Russia, actually. And In Kazakhstan, I met these people, and they have this ministry where they're actually helping equip and train local business owners to use their business as a way to disciple people and to make a kingdom impact. And this one Saturday, I got to go and be a part of it, and I sat in this room, and there were like 50 Kazakh business owners in the room who were being trained. They all have different businesses, and they're using their businesses to reach local Kazakhs for Christ and to disciple them in the kingdom. It's amazing. God is doing some awesome stuff. I'll tell you about one more guy. This guy's name is Benji. Benji lives in Switzerland, and Benji is an amazing man of God who there's nothing impressive about him. He's not an incredibly charismatic person. He's not the most persuasive and convincing speaker in the world. Benji loves the Lord and has deep roots with him. And he started doing this ministry where he goes into these unreached countries, especially he's done a lot in Indonesia and Malaysia, and he will find people who are trying to get churches going, and he will disciple them. So he'll bring them together for a week at a time and do deep discipling and equipping them with how to reach locals and how to actually start churches and how to develop people. He said this, there's this one really interesting quote. I don't know if it came directly from Benji, but he's the one I heard it from, so he's getting the credit today. And he said, at one point he felt like the Lord said, "Why are you trying to build the church?" I said, "I would build the church. I told you to make disciples." He's like, if you make disciples, the church will grow. If you build a church, you won't necessarily have discipleship. And so he's out there training all of these locals how to have disciple-making ministries. And in these countries, once again, a lot of times it's not in a church building like this. Awesome that you guys get to have something like this. But it's in homes where they're essentially hiding from the government, but making disciples, typically one family at a time. And as we've been able to go to these different places, a lot of these people have encouraged me in my faith and in my understanding of what it is to do life with God and what it is to disciple people and to bring people into his kingdom. And I want to share with you guys something that I learned from Benji this year. Good song, El Shaddai. So I want to take a look at the story of the prodigal son, which is a story that most of you have probably heard. If you haven't, that's cool. You get to hear it for the first time. I've always loved this story, and I feel like I got a little bit of a different perspective on it this time. So I'm going to read it this morning. It's in Luke chapter 15, starting in verse 11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to his father, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come home,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, All these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. You never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." A lot of times when Jesus told parables, he actually intended for them to be like shocking and offensive to people. And this story, like we hear it and it's like, oh, that's like a really cool story. But we miss some of like the cultural nuance that people would have been like, this story is ridiculous. And there's a few reasons for this. But I want to zoom out a little bit and say like, throughout Scripture, both the Old Testament and the New, there is one point that is made continually, and that point is Yahweh is not like the other gods. He's not like the other gods, and he's not like us. Okay? In his grace, God is making us like him, but we're not making God like us. Okay? And I'm glad that God's not becoming more and more like me. That's not a good thing, okay? And so in all these stories, in the Old Testament, and all these systems, and in just like all the different events that happen, it's actually like comparing and contrasting Yahweh with the gods of these other nations. And so maybe sometime, like if you read through the Bible in a year or do something like that, as you read the Old Testament, you can do a little bit of research and be like, oh, who is God actually being compared to in this story? And how is it painting a picture and showing people that this God is so different than all the other gods? So I'm going to point out a few things here. The Greek and Roman gods. I got to learn a little bit about the Greek gods and the Roman gods when my wife was doing some homeschool with my kids. And those stories are crazy. Have you guys ever studied Greek and Roman mythology? Like, yeah, it's weird. But here is something about the Greek and Roman gods. They had relationships with humans, and sometimes they even liked humans, and sometimes they even like had a level of love for humans, but they would never sacrifice for humans, and they would never inconvenience themselves for humans. Humans existed for their pleasure and their entertainment, but there's no way that the Greek and Roman gods were actually going to sacrifice or even inconvenience themselves for people. In fact, all of these gods demanded sacrifice and ritual all the time, and there was this fear that existed that if we don't do the right sacrifices, God is going to punish us. And I'll tell you, that level of thinking is still very alive and well in the world, okay? We've spent a lot of time this last couple of years in Hindu and Buddhist countries. And there are so many sacrifices and so many rituals and so many things they do. And from the outside, Buddhists can look like really peaceful people. And if you guys have ever seen like the depiction in movies or like even look like Kung Fu Panda or something, it's like inner peace. And it's this thing about like, oh, we're just so peaceful. They are scared to death. Scared to death. That if they do the wrong thing, the gods will punish them. So they live in constant fear and trying to avoid the punishment of whatever deity they believe in. And we see God flip this upside down. God also shows that as a father, he's not like human fathers. So once again, in this story, this offensive parable, the father does things that would actually bring shame to a father. And I'm just going to review them quickly. You've maybe heard some of this before. So the first one, plain and simple, is the son comes and says, "Give me my share of my inheritance." That would never happen. Any self-respecting Hebrew father would have been like, no. And this father does it. Why? Fathers would never do that. Second, after he's been shamed and disgraced and dishonored by his son, he waits for him to come back. 3, men in these cultures don't run. Running is a shameful thing. And so he even very specifically says he runs out to meet this son who has disgraced and dishonored him. Another thing, people are just listening to this and it's like, this makes no sense, because Jesus has also made it clear before this, he's telling parables to explain to people the kingdom of God and what his Father is like. And then he welcomes this son back without punishment, without consequence. And instead, he actually celebrates and rewards him. Right? He says, put a robe on him, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. And what these things are symbolizing is he's showing this son, you are still 100% my son, and nothing has changed between us because of what you've done. And everybody listening to this would be like, this makes no sense at all. Who is this Father? I'll tell you guys, just matter of factly, my life is pretty amazing. God has had, honestly, his hand of favor on my life, my whole life. There are things in my life that just don't make sense. Okay? And some of you have known me since I was young. They used to joke around about me that I could fall in a puddle and come out clean. God just supernaturally protected and did all this stuff. And I don't take credit for it. I'm just man, God just for some reason chose to give me a lot of favor in my life. My wife, my kids, we've been provided for incredibly well. We've had great friends and community everywhere we've gone. I've had great leaders. I've had people invest in me. My life doesn't make sense. Especially because I haven't necessarily done a whole lot to deserve that. I remember one time I was working with the World Race. This was probably 14 years ago, okay? And I'm on a flight to Cambodia. And I remember sitting on the plane and I was journaling and I was just having this conversation with the Lord. And I was looking at my life and everything in my life was going so well. My job, my ministry was going well, family finances were going well, my marriage was going well, all of this stuff. And also during this time, I was incredibly busy. I was not spending regular time with the Lord. My spiritual disciplines weren't what they should have been. And I'm looking at my life and I'm like, God, why are you blessing me? I don't deserve it. And I felt like the Lord spoke to me very clearly and he said, you still think that's how I work? And I sat there and I was like, yeah, it is. I had a similar experience this year. I was sitting at a coffee shop in Kazakhstan, and I was having another one of these reflective moments of just looking at everything going on in my life. And I was like, man, God is blessing so much. My family's doing well. My ministry's doing well. He's providing for us. He's taking care of us. And I don't feel like I'm doing that good of a job. And I was just like, God, why? And I felt like I actually almost had this vision while I was sitting there. And I had this vision of my son, Max. And I love getting to do stuff with Max. I love creating experiences for us to do together. Whether we're just having fun, we're going out riding dirt bikes, doing something like that. And I had this vision of Max looking at me and being like, Dad, why would you do all this for me? And I was like, oh, my heart is so full of love and I so enjoy blessing my son, not because of anything he's done for me, but just because of the love I have for him. And I felt like the Lord gave me that vision, and he's like, yeah, it's like that, but so much more. And I felt like I started to get just a closer glimpse and a better understanding of what the Father's heart is like, even when we're not doing a good job. If you ask me about my theology, I'm saved by grace through faith. It's not from myself. There's nothing I can do to make God love me more. There's nothing I can do to make God love me less. Like, this is what I believe. In my heart and in my emotions, that is not always reality. Okay? You guys know what it's like when you like believe one thing, but then like your daily experience of the thing is different? That's okay. I think we all do that. Because in my heart, I really think like God loves me more when I do what He wants me to do. And I am more valuable to God when I'm on top of my game. When I'm doing my spiritual disciplines, when my ministry is well, when I'm reaching the lost, when I'm doing this, like when I'm serving people well. And then those times where I kind of like drift and I'm not like regularly in the Word, and there are parts of my life I'm not so proud of, and maybe what I say about people when I'm behind the wheel of my car isn't the best. Like, in those times, God's like, and then there's like this like distance between us, right? And I start to think like, yeah, things aren't quite as good here. And in myself, I see both the younger brother and the older brother. Because there's times where I feel like I'm doing really well, and I'm like, hey, Dad, you see what I'm doing? And then there's times where I'm like, I don't even deserve to be close to him because of the way I'm living life right now. And both of these sons, they just miss the Father's heart. I want to share a little illustration with you guys, okay? So in our life with God, this is a little bit oversimplification, but just roll with it for a minute. I want to talk about 3 different things we have here, okay? So this bucket here is the love and acceptance that we have from God our Father, okay? In this lovely snap Tupperware container, this is our identity. This is God has said like, hey, you're part of my family. You're my son, you're my daughter, you have incredible value to me. And this water bottle here is my performance, okay? We're not going to use performance necessarily in like a super negative term. Sometimes people get really upset about the word performance. But like, this is just like, how am I doing? Okay? How am I doing in my relationship with the Lord? How am I doing in my relationship with other people? Am I bearing fruit? Am I being faithful with the things God's given me? Am I being a good steward? This, I'm going to put all of this in like the performance category, okay? And once again, even though our theology might be saved by grace through faith, this is the work of Christ and the gift of God. I want to talk about like what our like personal and like emotional reality is like. And I think a lot of times what we do is we start out with our performance, and we'll see if I can actually pull this off up here. I practiced earlier and I was okay. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, since I do the right things and since I make good choices, therefore I am a child of God. And I have value to God and I'm loved by God. And the better I do at this, the more acceptance and the more love that I get from the Father. Man, I promise I was able to make this stand up at home. I think this stage is crooked. That's what it is. And we start to build things like this. But then what happens is, maybe, and maybe not, we get this thing balanced and life feels good for a little bit. Like, oh yeah, like I feel really good in my relationship with the Lord. But this is so unstable. And the moment my performance wavers just a little bit, I am distant from God. I don't deserve His love. And I have to work really hard, and I have to do a better job down here with performance so that then maybe I can get this stuff to stack up again, and maybe we'll be okay, and maybe I can get back to that place where I feel really good about where my life and my relationship with the Lord is. But then I get busy, and I forget, and I slip up, and I fail at that thing I keep failing at, and we fall down again. And unfortunately, I think relationally, this is very often our reality with the Lord, is everything gets built on our performance. And the sad reality is, a lot of our human relationships do function like this. People love me when I do what they want me to. And unfortunately, some people have relationships like this with their parents or their children. You're welcome in my house as long as you do the things I want you to do. And you make the choices I want you to make. I am so thankful that God does not have that standard for me. Now, are there ways that God wants me to live my life? Absolutely. Am I called to be a good steward? Am I called to be a faithful servant? Am I called to love the people around me? 100%. Does it matter? Yes. Is it the foundation of my relationship with God? No. Luckily, we can put these in a different order. We can say, okay, the foundation here is the fact that God loves me and has invited me into his family, and he's given me this identity as a son or a daughter of his. And now I can start to build my performance on top of that. The guy who started Adventures in Missions, he's been an incredible mentor and leader to me. And he has this saying, he says, discipleship is waking people up to their identity and their role in God's kingdom. But he says, role has to come from identity. Identity does not come from role. And a lot of times we want to do this. It's like, oh, I'm a pastor, I'm a missionary, I do this. And then that's how you define yourself to everybody else. It's like, no, I am a beloved child of God. Therefore, these are the things I choose to do. And over here, our performance is not going to be perfect. Some of you, if you're like me, might struggle with consistency and discipline. It's like, oh shoot, I don't read my Bible as often as I would like to. I don't spend as much time in prayer as I would like to. If these people knew how often I do that, would they actually let me be a leader in a ministry? Would they do this? Right? But if our performance wavers here, our performance is the only thing that fell down. And we have a loving Father that's like, here, let me help you with that. Let me show you a different way to do this, okay? We can work on this again. But the rest of the thing isn't compromised. His love, his acceptance, our identity as his children is not compromised. When the younger son comes back, he's like, I'm not worthy to be your son. And the dad doesn't even address the comment. He's like, my son's home. Let's celebrate. Come on. It's like, God isn't having a conversation with you about whether you're worthy or not. He already made up his mind about that, and you don't get to change it. Nothing changes the bucket on the bottom here. Not your mistakes, not your failures. Now, you could choose to completely walk away and reject this whole thing of being accepted and loved by God. It's a pretty bad idea, though. And some people, when I start to talk like this, some people will get afraid of well, if you start saying that, people might just go do whatever they want to do. And I'm like, I think if people actually really understood the bottom two layers of this, we wouldn't have to worry about that. Because when you know what that love and acceptance is like, when you know what it means to be invited into the family of God and to be bestowed this incredible position as a son or daughter of his, that's not something people walk away from very often. But this balancing game of trying to put my identity and my relationship with God on top of my ability to perform and show up in a certain way, people walk away from that all the time because it's exhausting. Because it's actually not a weight that we were meant to bear. God isn't walking away from us. There are times where he will let us walk away with deep hopes that we're going to return. Because he is that Father who, as soon as we're returning, he's running out to meet us. And there's not the shame thing of man, you've been gone a long time. What have you been doing out there? It's oh, I'm so glad you're back. And guess what? I still love you, and you're still my son, you're still my daughter, and you're still welcome in my house, and you're still celebrated in my house. God has given us this firm foundation that we can build our life on, and we can build our ministries on. And when we fail, we don't have to fall that far, because really, it's like, okay, that fell over. We can pick that back up. It's not a big deal. Sometimes there are consequences relationally. Obviously, sin brings pain and destruction, and that's awful. But what it doesn't bring about is a loss of our position with God and a loss of his love and acceptance for us. We have this God who says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and you'll find rest for your souls." Take some liberties here, but he says, "I've built you a beautiful foundation that you can rest on and one that you can build on." It doesn't waver or fail when you fail. And it also says, I've given you my spirit, and I actually want to help you do this. This performance piece is not dependent on us. We get to partner with God. We get to work alongside him. He is giving us the power and the strength. And when we fall, he helps us get back up. And when we fail, he helps us fix it. And we can come to him and say, okay, I know that I'm okay. I love that in Hebrews it says, let us approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we can receive mercy to help us in our time of need. It says we've got a high priest who knows what it is to be tempted in every way. He didn't sin, but he knows what the temptation to sin is like. And there's no failure that he can't meet you in the middle of and help you out of. And so it says, it's not like we have to approach the throne of grace like this son did, being like, I'm terrible, I'm awful, I don't deserve to be called your son. We can come and say, God, I know that you love and accept me, and yeah, I've blown it, and I need your help. And we can do that with confidence because we know that we have a Father who wants to help us with it, who wants us back in his house, regardless of how badly we've blown it. God just sees a tipped over water bottle that he can help you fix. Your entire life, your soul, your relationship with him has not crumbled. He says, come home. We're so happy to have you here. God, we thank you that this is who you are. We thank you that we get to stand on the foundation of your love and acceptance. We thank you that you have granted us an identity of being loved and known and accepted and valued. Lord, when our heart and our emotions tells us that we're not worthy, that we won't be accepted, that we have to work hard to get back in your good graces so we can be loved by you, God, I pray that you would remind us of the truth. You've never left, that you've never stopped loving, that you've never stopped wanting us back in your presence. Father, you're so good, and we love you. Amen. I just want to thank you guys so much. This church has been a part of our ministry, and has prayed for us, has supported us, has been with us every step of the way for 16 years now. And that's just amazing. And so I know the last 16 years have been a journey for this church as well. And things have not always been easy here. And you guys have been really just steady and faithful and consistent with us. And we appreciate that so much. So thank you. My wife was going to be here this morning, had some interesting things. She was driving back from a wedding in Michigan, and our car broke down. So she'll be getting in this afternoon. Everything's fine now, but she is incredibly grateful as well, and just wanted me to share that with you guys and say sorry she wasn't able to be here. But yeah, we love and appreciate you guys a lot. Thanks for being in our corner, and thanks for always welcoming us when we come here.